I'm Llewellyn Thomas, the chairman of the mentoring committee. This is the second event for the mentoring group at the Guild. And of course, this is a shop window for mentoring at the Guild. So maybe perhaps more people in our online audience may be considering approaching us for mentoring, in which case, please do look at the details on the website. The panel that we put together are to show the breadth and depth of our relevance to the creative community. And so just to introduce you briefly to the panel that we have tonight to talk about our theme, which is design for manufacture. We have Fred Baier, furniture artist. We have Regina Heinz, architectural ceramic art. We have Michael Petry, installation artist, and Flora Roberts, decorative painting and design. I won't enlarge on that because I think you've all seen that information on the expanding their particular skills online. So design for manufacture, obviously it is a huge subject and even a contentious subject, but I think very appropriate for us to discuss here at the Guild, because there is a long history of design for manufacture in the Guild. I'm looking at William Morris himself there, he is sitting above us. Past master William Morris and his circle invented many products of all sorts that were reproduced in significant numbers by other makers and production processes. Some of you will know that William Morris's shop, and indeed his home, was in this square, in Queen Square, in the corner up there, so very, very near to us here. While there is great importance in encouraging the creation of unique works of art, especially in this institution, we have many makers who do one-off pieces. Volume production and design for this purpose can be a principal way to ensure a living income. New technologies, I'm hoping that we may have an event specifically focusing on new technologies, are allowing artists to access wider audiences through manufacturing, potentially enhancing both the general environment and the purpose of art. I noticed that there is going to be a BBC programme this week on how artists will save the world. And of course, working and thinking globally was a mainstream understanding until February the 24th this year. So there's some reassessment, of course, currently being engaged with. But going back to our main subject, should we be uncomfortable about linking art and commerce? Some of you will know that in this country, we talk of the creative industries with growing confidence as a real and significant part of the economy. The sort of figure mentioned of its value is in the region of 115 billion pounds. That's nearly 6% of the UK economy. So while we're having this talk this evening, there will be added 13 million pounds to the UK exchequer through artistic and creative endeavour. However, of course, there's still a nervousness about suggesting to anyone that running a creative life is just as valid as any other. So all of us as young people would have been told by our parents, you will never make any money as an artist. I always reminded people who made that sort of suggestion that Lucian Freud left an estate worth 93 million pounds. Of course, they always make that riposte. Well, because he was really talented, wasn't he? So of course, he did that. And in the 30 years that I taught, parents would ask me whether their child was, in my view, talented enough to be an artist. And I always found it a problem to unpick that. And I felt that, were they saying that simply being able was not enough to perform a successful role as a part of what is a huge industry? And what part of that child's growing skill set will be called upon most as they move through a very long creative career? It has, I would say, to be much more about being a useful worker, here we are at the Art Workers Guild, than an unrecognized genius. And of course, work was notoriously the four-letter word Hockney scrawled up on the studio wall at Maidstone College of Art when he was working there. And our own Royal College of Art, for art, design and manufacture, and that last often forgotten, seemingly separate and afterthought, almost an embarrassment. Under the umbrella of the mentoring initiative at the Guild, the idea is that we can help, advise up and coming and established creators as they confront issues in their professional life. The theme is certainly exploring the difficult and contentious area where art meets business. I hope this evening, myself and the panel will be able to unpick some of these issues, and we welcome questions from the floor, particularly difficult questions that you feel only we could answer. And we'll be opening up to questions at hopefully it will be 7:45 and maybe 7:50. In attempting to put together a framework for this evening, I've come to the conclusion that oversimplifying might be the only way forward. So I'm proposing to expand on the four main issue areas, and that is conceptual, practical, environmental, and legacy. So over to our panel here, looking first at conceptual. I'd made some prompts to the team to say, well, if design is the conceptual start of a project, which may never be realized. In the inevitable compromises in the attempt for volume manufacture, should design be restrained by manufacturing possibilities or even be manufacturer-led? And this, of course, takes the theme on from our last meeting, which was about collaboration. So should we be more conscious that any one-off idea is a prototype for future volume production? I think we've got some slight preparation for us, and perhaps Michael might you had something to say about the areas where the concept was being explored.
Yes, hello. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I have a few little objects that I'm going to show you that just look at the kind of conceptual ideas that we're talking about here in terms of the art of not making. Some of you may know this is a book I've written for Thames and Hudson. It's been out for a few years. Manufacturing is the art of not making, in the sense that an artist or an artisan makes a drawing, makes some sort of project, and then it is realized by someone else, whether that's a group of craftsmen or through manufacture in terms of machinery. This first object is a cup and saucer by Axel Salto, who any of you in the ceramics world will know is a very, very famous mid-century maker who generally only made unique objects, and those unique objects sell for about 25,000 pounds to 50,000 pounds. They're very beautiful. I don't own any, so I have brought you a cup and saucer, which is about 25 pounds, which he designed as a place setting, but it does have his mark on the back and the mark of the manufacturer. So artists and artisans have always been involved in manufacture. And I think it's quite important to note that this is a historical concept. This is a different kind of manufacture. This is by a group called Pauschus, which is a husband and wife mid-century team. And this type of object they made in the hundreds, not in the thousands, and is very much what studio pottery is about. And most of you will have seen studio pottery like Bernard Leach, Lucy, and so that's the sort of volume that would have been produced. And then finally, I have an object which some of you may know, which is a representation of Marcel Duchamp's fountain, where he took a manufactured object, i.e. a urinal, which was obviously made in the thousands and thousands, and he turned it into an artwork by signing it. A young British artist has turned it back into a manufacturing object, because this is an egg cup, which you could have your morning egg in this. So it goes from a manufacturing object into an artwork back into a mass-produced object. So I think it's important that we understand that when we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about how artists and artisans deal with other artisans, but also the manufacturing process, and that it's something that's been historically going on, and it's not anything we need to shy away from. We just need to understand what that process is and then help others understand it as well.
I'm somebody that really likes to engage with the manufacturing process as a creative aspect of what I do. So I got into doing wallpaper design through painting murals, and the companies I first worked with were really interested in the way that I used the panoramic of a mural, so it's a one-off image, and they wanted to, we're using digital technology. They wanted to make what I did on a bigger scale with bigger repeats. I hope that makes sense to you. But so when I worked for a few companies for a while, and then I got to the point when I was actually really interested in the end product. So I set about learning how to put my own painting into a digital format. And I became really interested in that manufacturing process and the creative limitations of what it could do. Yeah, that's, for instance, okay, so with digital printing, you can do as many different colors as you want, but I wanted my work to look a bit more analog, so a bit more like traditional printing methods, maybe using 5 colors. So ironically, I had to get my painting down to a fewer colors in order to make it look less digital, even though the process I was using was digital, if that makes sense. So things like that I became really fascinated by, because at the end of the day, I'm really interested in the end product, it being a beautiful one. So every single part of that journey is creatively of interest to me.
How much did you think that there was a real compromise that you were having to take to make these things in that way?
Well, I
There's
quite
a big
enjoyed
gap,
the
isn't
compromise.
it, between, well,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
actually became a creative process.
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. I like the limitations, because with digital, it's unlimited. It can go on forever, really. So I like that idea of having to give myself a brief and limit it.
But do you feel that in the work that you're making that people are recognizing that while it is still manufactured, there's still an aspect of uniqueness to it? That what you're making is really special.
I would hope so, because I would hope it's good design. That's what I'm aiming for, in the sense that, for instance, if it has a repeat, which it has to have a repeat if it's made into a roll of wallpaper, even if the repeat's really big, to be repeated around the room, the viewer can't get too bored of what they're looking at. So that has to be original. And also, I think I would like to say that my handwriting is in what I do. So, I mean, I have actually worked on William Morris designs for the William Morris Sanderson company, and given that a different spin using my own handwriting. So that is a really interesting idea too with regard to this. But
even though the work is manufactured, do they feel that they actually have, that your customers have an artwork?
I would hope so, there? Yeah, I would hope so, yeah.
Have they fed back in that way?
Yes,
and
they have
part
actually.
Of the motivation
yeah,
to
they
have to
have.
find
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And I think that's, it's obviously really satisfying when it happens.
Because we may be having a meeting about new technologies and how that has made opportunities for us as creatives to work differently. Yeah. And with something being produced, as it were, as a multiple, there's always that danger that it can be rather taken for granted. But the exclusivity
I think that comes down to copyright, though, doesn't it? So if you give them permission to anybody, my stuff is at the moment exclusively for wallpaper. It's not even for fabric. So what I'm doing right now. So I think that's a copyright thing. I mean, I don't mind it ending up on mugs. That'd be lovely. But that's, I guess, what you're maybe talking about. I don't know.
So ownership isn't really relinquished very much.
No.
Even though there's the manufacturing. Coming.
Yeah.
Would anybody like to contribute? Some words.
Right. I work with clay, but funnily enough, I never called myself a potter, but always a ceramic artist. I started with one-off pieces, small sculptures and wall panels. And then about 10 years ago, I was sort of commissioned or discovered by an American tile retailer and Sachs, and they commissioned me to develop a 3D tile, which I did. And since then, I'm specializing in architectural ceramics. So I'm designing and making large-scale wall panels for hotels, foyers, offices. But although they are, so in a way, my story is the story of developing a product, if you like, from a one-off piece, one-off design. But although they are now produced, so I'm not making them myself anymore. A studio in Stoke-on-Trent produces them. But although they are sort of produced in larger volume, they are in a way, each commission is still a one-off piece because they are site-specific. That means for each hotel or for each commission, I make a special design. And so in a way, they are using just new methods I couldn't make them myself anymore. It's impossible for one person to make large scale work. So I do need to use other, means of making, but I see them in my case, so that's just one aspect. I see them as one of art pieces. So ceramic art in architecture, if you like.
Do you feel that your name is sufficiently associated with the work as it finally emerges, or are you being subsumed within the process? Do you feel that you're leading it, or do you feel you're being led by manufacturing needs?
Well, to develop the product, when I had to develop, so there are technical considerations, how you make it. Do you make it solid? Do you make it hollow? So that was a challenge, which I actually enjoyed, a technical challenge.
Are they making the lead for it to help you understand how these things can be done, or are you moving the process on?
No,
be a challenge to the manufacturer.
It is my design. We were looking to realize my design in the best way possible. So they are not telling me you can't do this, but we are looking at something, how to realize the design, in how to make it possible. Mm-hmm.
Because it does occasionally happen that while an artist is involved with a manufacturer and certainly feels that to some extent they are not influencing the project as much as they would like to, they can feel that they're being left out of the process, and their knowledge isn't sufficiently being understood. Yes. by the manufacturer as the possibilities which can be achieved. I know there are stories of, say, where a sculptor has made an original which is being scaled up by other people, and being told by those people, well, this can't be done. And the sculptor traditionally goes in and says, well, actually it can, and they have the knowledge to do that. Mm-hmm. And to persuade the technicians that actually they just got to go that extra mile. And that could be the purpose of the opportunities that we have as artists to lead the process rather than to be led by it.
Yes. I mean, there's a whole, it's quite an interesting art in so usually what happens is that the architect designs the building and the interior designer, and the artwork comes last. So so in my case, that is the case. The artwork comes last. But I do have, my angle is that I have sort of established a brand with my tiles. So whoever commissions me wants these particular aesthetic appearance. But on other occasions, it can be that somebody just comes and says, oh, this artwork, I need something 2.30 m by 5.60 m or something. And, something has to with these colors. So then it becomes less interesting. But as I said, in my case, so the ideal would be that the artist is involved in the designing process right from the start. I think that would be what artists should be looking for, or maybe architects. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the manufacturer or the commissioner of a piece of work doesn't realize what can actually be achieved, or doesn't really respect the artist's vision themselves, and that has an idea about how they can fit into what.
I've met, yes, usually architects, they have their own vision, and they're very reluctant to allow anything else. So sometimes I have been approached by architects telling me exactly which shape they want or something, and asked me whether I could make it. But this, that's not what I do. So again, this hasn't happened. But I'm very
always managed to
aware
push
of
that
this.
point through and get them to agree that it is their vision, it's your vision that they're actually buying. They're not using you just as a sort of classic worker. They want something extra. There's some real value in
Yes.
your the personality, your mark, as it were.
Do you find it easier with working in a bigger group, or to get your own vision across at the end? Because I find that really interesting. When you're commissioned by an architectural firm, if the group is like a big group, I find it easier to get my vision across. For some reason, it's really strange.
Well, normally I work with interior designers, to be honest, not with architects.
Right.
They
or interior designers. Yeah. But you don't find there's a difference if there's just one or two interior designers as opposed to about 20, 10. Well, sometimes sometimes I've worked on projects with a big group, and there's just so many different voices that maybe there's an exhaustion that happens, and they just want you to just get on with your thing. That doesn't sound very professional, I know, but
No,
it's just
in my case, I think there are.
they trust a bit more, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I found it more difficult if many people are involved, because sometimes there are loads of people, and on different levels. The owner, the interior designer, the architect,
it's so difficult.
The project manager, and all those people need to coordinate, and it makes it sometimes more difficult.
Right.
So in my case, usually it happens that the interior designer just loves the work and hopefully is able to push it through, with the others involved. So I'm not involved with. Usually I'm not involved with the others. I'm just involved with.
No, I was interested.
Have you got something you'd like to add to that?
Well, I did have a go. When I left college, I was approached by Hillies first to go and talk to them. And I didn't know why they'd asked me. I thought they'd just asked me out to lunch because they thought my degree show was quite a nice looking degree show. Anyway, I sat around this table. They asked me if I was going to be interested in designing objects for them. And I thought, I hadn't even thought about that. I don't think so. No, but thanks for lunch. That was very kind of you. And then the next thing of that nature that happened was somebody who was putting together a group of people, a guy from Vogue, I think he was the editor of Vogue magazine at the time, a group of people to take them to a company in Italy as a design team to design a collection of furniture. And it was really, really good fun. We all went over there, we were briefed and lunched and put up in the most fabulous hotels. It was really good fun. And we were supposed to design, well, they'd just done 30s furniture. And so we were asked if we would name that for them, each piece. So we came up with the idea of calling each object some type of cocktail, because it seemed to be appropriate. And then, our actual project, so that was that project. And then hoping that would be very successful, on the funding from that success, we were then engaged to do, and they decided 40s furniture and what that might be. So we did all sorts of things, came up in the end with somewhere, it was a cross between the concrete wall that defended the whole of Europe, you know, that on the seafront, somewhere between that and Flash Gordon. And it was really good fun, but there was no money because we never ever got paid. And they didn't make it because they didn't sell their Art Deco stuff. So that was 2 unsuccessful things to do with industry. And then the third one was I got a letter from somebody who I didn't know who was, who's saying that they were asking if I wanted to make some prototypes for a rather well-known Italian designer. And I wrote back and said, oh no, thanks, I make my own things, not other people's. And it turned out it was Magistretti invited me to go and join in on Memphis, but they'd worded it in such a way that I got the wrong end of the stick. So that was a third one. And then, so really, as far as industry is concerned, I haven't really got much of a clue. But as far as making more than one-off and to have industrial processes done for you by people who have those, then I'm all in favor of that. And I do quite a lot of that in my work. And I have recently, well, okay, another mistake was that somebody early on said, well, you know, when your machines are all set up, why not just run off another one? And then you've got 2 of it and you can sell the other one to somebody. And so I suggested to this person who commissioned me to do something, and they said, oh, we don't want that. And that was quite good because it meant that I could say, well, in that case, it's going to be this much more expensive. And that always became a bargaining tool for putting the prices up. You can either have this exclusively for this amount of money, or I keep the rights to it and able to make another version of it or more for this amount less money. And I did once try and persuade somebody that they could save money by lending me money to make several of them, but they declined. So I have all these ideas about business, but I'm obviously not really a business man about these things. But I have started to make objects because I've done it through firms doing things for me, where I can make several of something and then have them in stores. And then when somebody comes around, I've got something to sell off the shelf. Because I've always thought that the sort of objects that I make are, they're not the sort of things that people buy if they're shopping. They don't buy through shopping. So they don't go out to buy, they come across it and go, oh, might we be able to make space for that? Or, well, I quite like one of those, but it would have to be blue, not green, or whatever it's. Anyway, I do end up with some things. And I have now got a couple of lines that I have, and I've also got a gallery who's much better at selling things than I've ever seen before, which is quite good. And they, when I say, oh yeah, no, I'll make more of these, they want to know exactly how many more. And I've got to state exactly how many more, because they're going to be sold as editions. Sounds very grand, doesn't it? Which I, and I'm imagining, well, it'd be an awful pity if they go really well very quickly. And I've said, I'm only going to make 10 of them, because then you're stuffed, aren't you? Except that this week I've just been to Amsterdam, and a friend has bought who collects sculpture, had bought a small sculpture, and it's a Barry Flanagan, and it was at auction online from an auction house in Norwood. Don't know if anybody knows an auction house in Norwood. Anyway, but my friend lives in Amsterdam, And he said, would I go and get it and bring it over? Because I was coming over. So I went and got it. And it's a little Baufangen. And it's something that was an edition of 10. But this is an artist proof. So there's a little wriggle room for making a whole load more of something. Oh yes, artist proofs, yes.
And also,
Yeah, thanks, Oscar, yeah. Oh,
just so you can add to that, you can make hors de commerce edition as
Oh, yeah.
well. Yes, so which then, even though they're not meant to be sold, obviously do get sold.
in the
Yes.
end.
In the end, yes.
I had one lost in the post and then it turned up, so I don't know what you call that.
Yeah.
I also, as a printmaker, would do a small edition and then hundreds and hundreds of artist proofs. But they're very cheap, so no one's really been hurt. Just trying to move our discussion on into the really practical area. One of the questions that I was looking for an answer for was, is the access to making on a volume scale easier in today's world, and is it more affordable in the current era? And though we're talking about volume, does it have to be what we might call mass production? Is there some sort of limit on that? As Fred was saying, clearly for some sculptors, an edition of 10 is affordable for them, and they don't need to produce an edition of 1,000. But given that there is a mass audience out there for good work, should we really be making good design much more accessible, and to move away from the feeling that producing in too much volume really does undermine what we're doing as artists?
Well, I was just thinking about how accessible it is to produce wallpapers on a bigger scale. That was something you were saying. And I think there's factories I work with that do really small print runs, but even I couldn't afford to do that myself. So I had to team up with other companies, and another company in particular, to do more of my own work. And then what was the other thing that we were talking about there? About what volume really is. Well, that's a bit of a weird one for me, because my artworks at the end of the day become digital files. So, I mean, I want to command quite high prices for, because I don't really like the idea of, I don't really like it on an ethical or ecological level, pile high, sell cheap. I'd rather people were living with my stuff for a while and making commitments to putting it on the wall for a while. I don't really want to encourage a high turnover, so it has to command some kind of high level price for me personally. But, yeah.
I make installations and I make objects across many different materials, and the idea of work for me is also very conceptual. That is an object that I have made, the book. And the book is published by a manufacturer, Thames and Hudson, and it's published in literally thousands and thousands and thousands, thankfully. And interestingly, you, as the artist or the author, I have certain control. I don't have complete control over that book. Obviously, I do in terms of the content, but the nature of selling books is that the cover is the one bit that I am not allowed to decide on. But I have to say this: the Thames and Hudson have gone with all the covers that I have suggested, but only after doing market research to make sure that they are going to actually sell. And so there is an issue about, you don't want to have literally thousands of books stuck left in a warehouse. And so in terms of manufacture, in terms of sale on a large basis, there are processes that have absolutely nothing to do with what you as the maker or the artist are interested in. I mean, they literally do like movies. They mock up the cover of 3 versions of the book. They have people come in and they look at them and they say, do you think this is, you know, which of these covers you like best? And that's, I mean, they do all that sort of thing. And I think it's quite important, not just in terms of the making of a book, but I mean, we are using resources in a global world where resources are becoming more and more, but they are of course finite, but they're ethically, we need to be more sensible about the way that we use things. I make a lot of work in glass. Many people know me as an installation artist, as someone who works in glass. Glass is unbelievably gas consuming. And in the time of this Russian war, that's something I'm very aware of. And most of the factories that I work with are also concerned about how to reduce the amount of gas that is being used and how that heat can be recycled and used in other ways. So I think manufacture is a big process. It's not just producing something and selling it. It's all those processes along the way. And we as makers have to be aware that we are using those resources and be responsible for them. There are certain places I won't work with because they have absolutely no desire to be ecological. And it's like, no, I'm not going to work in those situations. So manufacturing is more than just the machine turning. It's all the processes that get you to that point.
Do you think we're entering a time when the artist or designer can take on production and marketing completely themselves and potentially gain the margin lost to the manufacturer and the retailer? Which is, I know it's a difficult one.
I'd say that some people would be really good at that and others would be absolutely hopeless. I can sit in this room and see people who are good at marketing ideas and some people who've had a go at it and not quite managed. And it's horses for courses, really, isn't it? I mean, you think of, well, I don't know, something like Margot Selby, the weaver. Do you know, I mean, anybody know who I mean by that? So she, you know, bloody hell, she's so good at marketing, you know, and she's made something from, you know, her sitting there on a loom into big business, and lots of other people have too. How does she do that? I know, why haven't we got her on here?
Well, I know, I was just, I mean, I was thinking about that question too. And I was thinking, actually, I think social media is very powerful. Of course, everybody knows that, because you can market yourself creatively without even having to think about the fact that you're marketing. It almost happens by mistake. I've found that quite useful. And I'm not a natural, you know, talk about my work type. So, yeah.
I think you have to. I think the people who do that have to have this massive drive. That means that they, you know, they live their life 24/7. So they're doing the work, they're doing the promotion, they're doing the networking, they're out on. I wonder how Margot does it. Yeah. There are people like, for instance, I mean, not making any names, but John Makepeace, who still hasn't been on a holiday yet, and he's.
I know John Makepeace, and he has been on a holiday, so don't worry.
Oh, but he hardly, well, Jenny says that he never goes on a holiday. But okay, he has been on a holiday. But yes, but you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yes, exactly. You have to be, I mean, I am obsessive in some ways, and I'm sure we all are, in order to be, because it's sort of a self-driven thing. You have to be a certain amount obsessive, but you have to be obsessive in spades, don't you, in order to be that manufacturing focus, as well, or hugely endowed with the large amounts of cash that either others offer you or you go out to get, or you call. I mean, the other way for, let's say, people who are more in the design field is you court the industry with your talent, and then they employ you to make, I don't know, let's say, Tomoko Azumi for some American company or whatever, you know, whoever the person,
Collaborations,
you know,
yeah.
that sort of thing.
Mm.
And that's another way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Michael Selby designed textiles for, I don't know, forgot which company it is, but that's how it started.
I think
Or I
that's
think she still does.
I think quite a lot of,
textiles for furniture
Yeah,
and curtains and.
I think in that world that's quite, lots of people are
Yeah.
using that avenue.
But
Yeah.
she still makes her own one-off art pieces to go with.
Mhm.
So she does both.
Amazing.
I mean, probably the worst industry for doing this, I would say, is the fashion trade, because they eat up people who are creative, and it's always done under the Louis Vuitton brand or whatever it is. They make their interns work for nothing, all hours God sends. They treat them like crap, but in the end, what you get is a very, very rich variety of object, beautiful, but an awful lot of exhausted young people whose talent has been almost stolen from them. But in most other areas, that doesn't really happen.
I was told by someone in the fashion industry that people are kind of slightly rebelling against that. So
Well, jolly good.
yeah, good.
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
And they're able to market themselves on these social media platforms without people have asked them to go and work for Louis Vuitton, and they've said no thanks, don't need you. So it's interesting. Yeah.
So are we seeing something of a rise in the power of the artist? If the artist can control the way that their materials are promoted, can control the retailing of them, can push a particular idea that they have, as we never have been able to do before. Are we actually at the threshold of a real change in the way that society is looking at artists and the way that we're contributing to the bigger society? I mean, there is a view, there perhaps has been a view in the past, that while art is inevitable, it's an extra to life.
It means via social media.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think possibly. Yeah. I mean, certainly not. I mean, if you're thinking of things like selling through Liberties or something like that, you know, they've got a square foot per. They got to have those sorts of shops, for instance, their whole shops are worked out and that have to yield so much profit per square meter of space. And so because of that, they, you know, objects like big things like something like that I might make takes up a lot of space and is very rarefied. And so they think, oh, well, we've got to put 120% on that. And that just kills any chance of ever selling anything. You could possibly put 120% on some tiny little thing because it's still not very much at twice the price. But when things are big money in the first place.
But it may be that in the world as had been being developed before the 24th of February, that yes, the space in the centre of London may be very expensive, but we have the opportunity of having large objects elsewhere in the environment where people can access them, whether that be virtually or actually, and that may be at a much smaller cost. So there may be more opportunities for making different material, which will meet different audiences and be made in different ways. And I think we are actually at a moment of the most profound change, perhaps particularly alerted by recent events, where artists can make a big difference to how we're providing material to people and what people want. And Michael was alluding to our responsibility as artists. So if we can move on to the environmental focus. How do we as artists and designers make stuff but avoid contributing to landfill? Is it a question of that material being valued so that it is not thrown away? We're not just contributing to the disposable part of the world. And our work is about manipulating perhaps more high value materials through design to make them more perpetually valued and not thrown away. Does anybody have a view on that?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
got to feel about everything.
your work in buildings. I certainly did some work that appeared in buildings, and I felt that, well, that thing's going to be there forever, and then, and then drove past that building and found it had been disappeared. And
Well,
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
the only thing I can contribute is, I mean, clay ceramics is, though not recyclable as such, but it's, you know, it's a very natural material. So it could replace some plastic possibly in the, you know, for even more so. You know, we are drowning in plastic, for example. So we could think of alternative materials for everyday use, for example, which would reduce this horrible material. That's what I think.
I go back to the idea of good design, in my opinion. It doesn't follow fashion too much, like the current thing, so that it hangs around for a bit longer. On wallpaper on walls, you're living with it for a while.
Or upcycling is another area which is becomes very fashionable. Using everyday objects or used objects and make something else with it. I think that's a very good for good design. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to say, because you think the artist, are there areas where the artist can contribute? I think we are all surrounded. We are constant. All our objects are designed by artists or designers. I mean, we can't escape artists anyway. That's what I think. We just should think of what is good design. No?
It brings us on to the legacy, and I'm just looking at the time because we're nearly open for questions. Our work today, I suppose, is our aspiration. It is going to be part of the heritage of the future. We are making, as it were, tomorrow's antiques. But how are we assuring that there is a value linked to the names of the creative individuals associated with that heritage? And we're not just contributing to a conglomeration of anonymous stuff, which certainly represents our culture, but not the ideas of the individuals responsible for that culture.
Well, if you look at Antiques Roadshow, the guys who are the experts, they bring up these things that nobody would know who the hell it was, except for the expert. And they go off on one, don't they, about, oh, this is a really nice little one by George Williams of 1472, who only did this. And they know, and they keep all of those things alive, don't they? So presumably in the future, Antiques Roadshow shall still be going, won't it? And so our stuff will be in it.
So even in volume of manufacture, there is an essential story which we need to be connected to the works that we make, and to promote that story, perhaps more than the object itself, because that's the thing that actually has the resonance. So when they go into one of your rooms, do they feel that I'm in a Flora Roberts environment?
Oh, that'd be lovely, obviously.
And that's really how we want to see that develop, don't we?
I guess so, yeah.
And that could be our aspiration.
Yes, that could
I
be the
need to
aim.
have a Flora Roberts room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, although we keep on going on about William Morris and everything, it is time for him to step aside for Flora, I think.
Can I just say one thing about looking towards the future in terms of design? Many of you will have at least heard of the term NFTs and digital work being created for the metaverse. And I've just been asked to do this. And I'm really researching into it because it's incredibly computer use heavy. And there are different blockchains that are better and worse, and they cause a lot of ecological damage. They use a lot of electricity, et cetera. And so this is actually, it sounds so crazy that it should be a real thing, but it is really a big thing. And it is where we are moving to very quickly in the present, not even the future. And it is,
hype though, because even with the cryptocurrency thing, it's hard to pin it down, isn't it?
I think this is true. There is a lot of hype, but there is a lot of reality to it, and people are making vast fortunes very quickly in selling work that is really, it's not regulated. That's right. There's so much going on. That's why I'm being extremely careful about this, because I'm not really, it's not anyone in this room's generation. Okay, it's our kids, our grandkids who are, from that generation, who instantly understand it, what have you. I mean, I hope to somehow remain attached to the present and maybe to the future by doing some work towards that. But it really does require us to be ecologically responsible as well as trying not to aid people to be laundering money, selling drugs. That apparently this crypto sort of thing is a real thing for drug money laundering, for Russian money laundering, and all sorts of things. So absolutely, it's something happening. We kind of I think we do need to be thinking about it, but we need to think about it in the bigger sense as well.
I wonder how much the named artists are thinking about the ecological thing at the forefront of what they're doing.
I think most people aren't, and I think it's really important to know how damaging they are. Yes.
Yeah.
There are vast numbers of people who are paying 50, 100,000 pounds for a digital file by someone who is not even an artist.
It's not about art.
Oh, it could be about art. And I think the major galleries are trying to get their artists to make work for that space, to try to bring it more towards the art world, the design world. But obviously it started out as a tech kind of thing. And a lot, I mean, the most valuable thing is a smiling monkey or something, I mean, okay, it's not really what you or I might like as an artwork, but I mean, certainly there are just literally hundreds of thousands of tech millionaires, and they're the ones who are buying it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're opening up to questions now as our time has got on. And thank you very much for the questions there. There's a roving microphone going around, so please do use that really for the benefit of our online audience, because they won't be able to hear the questions. But please, from our audience, there's a question here at the front. And Lee, am I going to have the computer for? Yes. Please, questions from online. I think Lee's going to give me. Yes, so I'll be able to receive some questions from the online audience as well. Over to you at the front here. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for such an interesting talk. And one of the things that came to mind, I don't think it really applies to a lot of the brothers in the Art Workers Guild, but Flora was saying, you were talking about social media and promoting yourself on social media. And an artist I know recently, Vanessa Bowman, does these lovely pastoral paintings of her home where she lives in Dorset. And somebody contacted her from the States to say, oh, that's amazing. Your paintings are all over jumpers now. The equivalent of like H&M or something. It's not H&M, I have to say. It's a company in Singapore, but it's through the Chinese have no thing of copyright. And I could see that would be a danger for you, Flora. For instance, I mean, it may not apply to the rest of the brothers, but
I don't know.
yeah, well, that's so yeah. So that is the thing, because it's very, very difficult to do anything about copyright in China.
So
you can't really.
And even to be honest, I don't know. I haven't got any direct experience, but 10 years ago, I think it's quite hard to even sue if someone in the
You
Western
can't, yeah,
world has copied.
you can't,
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
just-
do anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, c'est la vie.
Anish Kapoor made this very large cloud piece in Chicago. It's a big mirrored kind of thing. And the Chinese went over, photographed it from all angles, and then they made one that is exactly the same, literally exactly the same size, the whole thing. And he tried to sue them. And they said, oh, yours reflects the sky, ours reflects the earth. And so the Chinese law said, no, you couldn't sue them at all. I mean, yeah, absolutely. If you aren't manufacturing in China, that there is no way you can sue for that. And if you are manufacturing in China, it is a good thing to just assume they will knock it off. There is a Chinese version of this book, which I get absolutely no royalties for. And I spoke with Thames and Hudson, and I said, the only thing I want to know is, have they got my name right? Because I would like at least people to know that I wrote it, even if I'm not getting anything for it, because and Thames and Hudson are like, no, we can't. There is just simply no way we can try to get those royalties. Impossible.
It's really fascinating to think what's actually being copied, though, isn't it? Like, what relevance does it have to them?
Well, also when Rebecca and I were graduating from the Royal College of Art, at that time it was well known that there would be, I don't want to just say Chinese people, I've many Chinese friends, but yes, it was Chinese people would be going around photographing the students' work at the degree shows, and then having it copied and knocked off, anything like jewelry designs or anything that would be handy to them. So I mean, it is a big problem for manufacturing in general. So watch out.
Though at the same time as that, art is taught by example, isn't it? So you're all told about look at so and so, look at so and so, look at so and so. Be influenced by whoever or what. Anyway. It is by example, and so people are perfectly. It's the right thing that people can take from other people's work and be influenced. I think that's exactly part of what.
I think it's one thing to be influenced, but to actually copy something is a slightly different thing.
Yes, but the thing is, in the Chinese principle, it's having been teaching quite a lot of Chinese people, it doesn't work the same way. When you suggest to them that they look at a lot of things and be influenced by them, they do much more feel quite comfortable with sort of nicking the idea and then representing it. And that's their way of being.
I think representing, though, is the creative aspect, isn't it?
Yes.
Rather than
Okay,
just directly.
That the way that things have always been.
Yeah, I think.
When there's a fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important.
Everybody does it. And
Yeah.
everybody
I think
dresses the same, has the same products in their houses.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
I think if you look at something like Chanel, which is copied and redesigned all the way down different levels of clothing manufacturers. You have Chanel at the top, and then you have Zara and H&M, and then you have in America something like Kmart that actually is selling a version of a Chanel jacket, which costs $10 instead of $1,000 or whatever it is. I think this is actually okay, because this is about reinterpreting something that people want. I think there is a real difference between that and then literally copying something exactly. And so, while Marcel Duchamp is someone who has influenced probably most of us in this room, I don't think any of us would want to remake his work. I mean, exactly. I mean, and call it our own. And that's all I'm trying to get across. And so I don't think it's only a problem for China, because as I say, you know, with the Chanel thing, you know, it's reinterpreted all the way down, and Chanel has, and most designers have said, we don't care because our clients will never buy a Kmart $10 jacket. They want the $1,000 one or the $10,000 one. So they know their market, and I think that's absolutely fine.
Hi, aren't you differentiating? I mean, designers are by their nature, I think, probably copyists, you know, for want of a better word, or representations of etc. But then you're not differentiating between art and design, just like you're not differentiating between art and artisans or crafts, etc. Because that, you know, for me, there is a difference.
I'm sort of thinking about how boring it must be just to copy something exactly. So that
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
That's
But-
what made me think about.
But
Yeah.
you know, what you're,
Don't we all copy things?
absolutely.
We all dress fashionably.
We all do.
We all dress
Ah.
in the same way at the same time.
Yeah.
And we all have the same things in our houses
Mm.
and on our walls.
Yeah.
That's just the way human beings are.
Yeah, we've all
Yes,
knocked
and-
through and
I'm
made our
sorry.
kitchens much bigger.
No,
than
we
they used to
don't.
be.
My art is very different to what I have in the rest of my house. My art is absolutely individual that's on my wall, and I hope nobody else has got it because I've bought it from a very specific artist. Whereas design is a completely different thing in a way because you've got commerciality and manufacture attached to it. This woman, her painting, her actual painting was just lifted and from social media somewhere and then just plastered onto cheap acrylic jumpers. That's what
Did she, sorry, just a brief question, did she get paid for it? Did
No,
she get
no,
royalties?
she didn't
No.
even know it'd been done.
Okay.
No
That's-
control over it whatsoever.
I'm trying to engage with the technology here. We do have some questions from our online audience, and Elizabeth Whitby Solo, I think Lee will unmute you, and you can actually speak about your. You can share your question with us if you can do that, please. I think Lee's going to unmute you, and you can be heard in the hall. Let's see if it
Oh,
works.
right. Thank you so
is a
much.
first.
Can you,
This is, yes,
can
this
you
is
hear
a
me?
first for us to try to
All
get.
right, hello.
We're
Yes,
trying to get our online community.
Some
Yes.
people are looking at each other.
Can you try
can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah, all right, great. Yeah, I just wanted to point out, it had been brought to my attention last year, it's about the idea of personal
can't- we can't
branding.
hear.
sorry, we've got a small technical error.
Oh.
Is she unmuted?
Yeah, I think she's unmuted.
I think the people online can hear me. Shall I try again?
So shall I just read out what Elizabeth, you do
Sure.
a thumbs on that. So the idea of copying perhaps emphasizes the importance of personal branding, that your ideas can be identified as you, become something more than just the object that can be copied. And the online community is agreeing and echoing the ideas. And she says, continues to say, the idea of individual branding can be seen intimidating from an artist's point of view. We want to throw that to the audience here.
What, say it again. Give us a synopsis of what that might mean.
Yeah, I'm just reading. I'm just reading it out. The idea of copying perhaps emphasizes the importance of personal branding. Your ideas can be identified as you, become something more than just the object that can be copied. So I think it's that idea we were talking about earlier about making sure that the personality issue is the one that we're mostly focused on, and in the work that I do, I can certainly say that in the work that I do with my wife, we are very aware that in a sense that it is only the personality which is really being bought into, and if it is copied at all, in a sense it makes it a negative because it isn't our product. You know, people are actually very much buying into the name and the idea which lies behind the whole process. But anyway, that's my view.
It makes me think about why I like drawing and painting so much, because if we were all drawing the same thing, even if we'd all been told to draw it like Picasso, we would all do something different. So yeah, it makes me think about that.
And one of the kind of interesting things as well, and this is not necessarily a bash at China, but there is a whole village which just makes paintings.
Yes.
And you can actually send them a photograph of a loved one or a dog or what have you, and they will make that as a painting. Or you can send them a photo of a Rembrandt, and they will paint you a Rembrandt. Now, the thing I would say, because I have actually seen through an artist who is in a different book of mine called Nature Mort, who actually sent to China certain things that he wanted them to paint. And it was very interesting what he got back, because every one of those paintings was still unique and different, because of course they're all different artists. And at the end of the day, you know, they were quite interesting in themselves because they were a Chinese interpretation of a Western thing. And it was in itself very interesting. And I say that because I have worked again with many Asian artists. And one of the things that they have told me, just in terms of representational work, in terms of Western views of when Western people try to paint them, we often quite unconsciously make very real stereotypes, especially around the face, the eyes. And they look at that painting and say, that has nothing to do with me, whereas we might not see it in the same way. So I think all of these cultural norms are at play, and they're interesting. And I do think we in the West have to also say, well, okay, we are not the focus of the world. The world is there, it's out there, and we have to function within it. And we have to find ways to work and work with other people and other cultures, which have very different traditions, because that's, as you were saying, they have a very different tradition in China about remaking or copying, or they wouldn't even call it that. I mean, that's the point, is that that's not a term they would necessarily use.
Well, we missed a bit of a trick when probably around Thatcher's time, we decided that the only thing worth having was the intellectual property of ideas. And we got rid of making as part of the fabric of Britain, and skills and things just have depleted, you know. Whereas here we are with the Chinese having such great inventive ideas, having a whole village full of artists who'll paint any picture you like. What a brilliant idea. We could, you know, why don't we nick that idea off them and throw it back at them?
Hello. Well, I've been there a couple of times to that village, and I don't know if you have either, but one of the techniques they use is they take the image, say a popular one is Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers, very popular. And what they do is they print the image onto the canvas and then they paint that.
Oh, neat.
Just thought you might like to know that it's not just copying it, you know.
Years ago, I spent some time in a factory in China, a ceramics factory, and there was a level of skill that I hadn't seen here. And I had worked in factories. I had done designing for factories here, and I hadn't seen that level of skill ever before. It was extraordinary.
We have a question from our online community to share with you. Lydia Beanland. She says, I come from a print design background for luxury, but still very fast fashion, 4 seasons a year, at times up to 30 designs per collection each season. I became literally full up, even ill, by how much one needed to produce each season. I now don't work in the fashion industry, but I still work in multiples as an artist. But I do think by working in multiples, one can gain very unexpected results. On another thought, as designers, I do think we have to accept that we are part of the mass production problem when we work, but working with far more thought through product does alleviate this somewhat. What I found in the fashion industry that produced the most waste actually stemmed from lack of thinking things through. I think we would all agree with that.
Good one.
And Katie McIntyre agrees with Lydia and says that hopefully the better the design, the longer the life of the object. And I think that perhaps is really a focus for us this evening, that design is really the beginning, the end, and the design is a personal thing. It is an own thing by that individual. Flora was talking about her handwriting, and you know that if that is reproduced, it doesn't carry with it the same honesty, even if it's pixel to pixel, because the motivation behind it is entirely different. That's a different, that's the old chestnut of the faker and the maker. The faker only knows the end, and the maker only knows the beginning. Emma.
I just wanted to ask, as somebody who isn't a maker, surely these questions about, you know, compromising the individual vision and quite what happens in the manufacturing process do vary enormously depending on the medium that you're working in, whether you're talking about a printed design or ceramics, which you might, you know, produce yourself on a wheel, but to be done in multiples has to be a completely different technique. Furniture, I mean, presumably there, as I say, I'm really speaking in ignorance, but presumably it really depends on the medium, how far the scaling up to mass is going to involve compromises, and whether some medium are much better at scaling up without compromising than others. And I really ask for information. I would be interested.
There's a girl called Alma who used to run Brighton's ceramics department. She's just retired, but she used to, before that job, and she was a ceramicist herself, she had a job as the scaler upper at Morris Singer's bronze foundry. And everybody asked for, she only worked 2 days a week, but everybody who had any sort of thing about pride about how their objects were asked for Alma to do the scaling up. That was in the days when things weren't digitally scanned and then scaled up, but they were scaled up on a pantograph, if you know what that is. That's where, with a whole series of levers, you can make a little tiny movement here, and over there, the same movement is done large. And so pretty much all of, I don't know, what's his name? We've got sculptures of his all over the country. Henry Moore. All those Henry Moores are all made from little plaster things that he did. And the scaling up. Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. But so basically scaling up is a very, very hands-on, craft-based. Even when it's digitally scaled up, it doesn't work necessarily as well if it isn't fiddled with by the scaler upper to give it its whatever.
Well, the scaling up in terms of mass and the scaling up in terms of literal size, which are presumably different things.
I worked as a scenery painter a long time ago, and I remember doing some front cloths for Covent Garden for Sidney Nolan, and he would come in with a small little sketch, and I would have to scale it up with a 6-inch ruler to 50 feet by 40 feet, and I noticed that when he came into the studio, when it was completed, that he would walk very deliberately up to the canvas and push it really hard. And I noticed he did this every time with each painting that was produced. And I didn't ask him about it, but I realized that he was actually, as it were, claiming possession of it, as if, although it had been manufactured by myself as a technician, he still owned it. it was his, entirely his, and he only would get the credit.
Can I say something about getting the credit? I mean, one of the things in the book, The Art of Not Making, that I absolutely push, and I did as much as I could in this book to find out who the makers were. About half the time, the artists didn't know who the makers were, so their names are not included. I always include the names of the people who make the objects that I have as my name. At the end of the day, it's still my object. It's my painting. It's my installation, wherever, whatever it is. But in the same way that when you see a movie at the end, you see all the credits of all the people. It's still a Jane Campion film because it's her vision. Okay, so you understand how that works as a viewer. And I simply want to say, in the world that we're in, we as makers, when we use the skills of other people, we need to give them that credit. It doesn't take away from my idea at all. I don't feel that in any way. And so I always do that because I use the skills of a lot of people. And to answer this question about scaling up, one of the things as an artist who uses the skills of other people, you have to learn how to do that. Okay, you actually do have to learn how to ask, how to work with the other people, how to get something out that has your vision, but it's not one-to-one. Now, I mean, this book has been translated into several languages. Anyone who has any understanding of more than one language will know translation is not one-to-one, okay? And it is a translation of your ideas anytime you work with other people to make something jointly. And so you have to understand that that is a very unique and different process. And so the scaling up, whether it's even if you're just making one thing like this screen, it still requires you as the artist to work, I think, properly with the persons or the people who are making that, and then absolutely give them the credit for that.
Because the artwork can certainly be invisible. Again, a story from my long ago life as a scenery painter. The designer of whatever opera it was decided that the front cloth would in fact be a gauze, and it was Laguerre's Fall of the Rebel Angels, about 500 little figures cascading down. And again, it was 50 feet by 40 feet for the Royal Opera House. And painted over about 3 weeks on gauze, the Fall of the Rebel Angels. And I remember reading in the paper that they were impressed by the projection transparency. So not only was I invisible, but everything that had been done was invisible. I don't think even Laguerre got a credit for it.
I just wanted to quickly add, I'm not sure if it's suitable, but this idea of that the artist is using other people is nothing new. I mean, think of the old masters, Rubens or Titian, Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, they had big workshops and they were using other people to paint for them. And the assistants became then famous. I think that's how Leonardo da Vinci started, in a workshop of somebody else. So it's nothing special.
A mentee.
Yeah.
All of you mentees who want to be mentored.
But I mean, isn't there quite a difference though between the kind of, the workshop practice of someone like Rubens and employing someone else who works for themselves and buying in their expertise on a one-off basis? It's a much more modern market relationship.
Yeah,
that
is true. But what we really didn't talk about was that there are so many different aspects to the whole market. There is the one of the art piece, there is the industrial design where you actually design an everyday object, which is very skilled process as well. There is the so-called craftsperson. who, in my view, now has become an artist. If you have been to collect the craft, the applied arts fair, these are art pieces. These are one-off pieces, although they are so-called craft pieces. So the areas are kind of in flux. Or, you know, or you have designers who are very distinguished. You mentioned the Memphis group. I mean, they have a really specific style, recognizable. Or if we talked about mass production of artist objects, think of the Mona Lisa. I mean, the Mona Lisa is the most reproduced portrait in the world, on everything, on cups, on t-shirts, on
I've got a.
but it hasn't taken away any of the value, has it?
I've got a postcard of her, which is that one that flips and she winks at you.
But it's still the Mona Lisa.
It's still the Mona Lisa, yeah, for sure.
Or because we talked about the Chinese have reproduced whole villages. I mean, they have reproduced Hallstatt. I'm from Austria, you know, village in Hallstatt. Hesitate. I mean, but Hallstatt, the original is still there, you know.
They've got 2 or 3 Venices as well, I think.
Venice, yes.
But
So it's quite a tricky,
Yeah.
it's a really tricky area. Yeah.
those old, I mean, things did work in a different way. You were apprenticed as a craftsperson. As part of your education, as your art education. That's how it worked in those days. And in a similar way, I suppose we have interns that work in a similar sort of way, and some people choose not to pay them very much, which is a little bit disappointing. But nevertheless, that still happens.
I think we're coming to the point where we're winding things up, and for the group who are here in the hall, we have some refreshments for you. We're bringing them into the next hall. So if we can, I think there are no more questions coming, and I hope this has been a useful evening for you. We certainly had some very good feedback from our online audience who appear to have enjoyed the depth of the discussion. So thank you very much, the online audience. Thank you very much, our physical audience here, and thank you very much to the team on the platform for being so.
Can I just say one thing, that in the future we'll be able to send the online audience digitally printed sandwiches to join in with us.
We can hope for that, hopefully. So thank you, everybody, and let's break for refreshments. Thank you.